I've been in the elevator repair business for 17 years, long enough to know that most people never think about the machines that carry them between floors until something goes wrong. When that happens, they panic, they call. And I show up with my toolkit and my ladder, usually at the worst possible time. The work isn't glamorous. You spend hours in narrow shafts where one misstep means a 30-foot drop onto concrete. You deal with ancient wiring that crackles when you touch it. Hydraulic fluids that eat through gloves and motors powerful enough to crush bone. But it pays well, and I'm good at it. I've pulled people from stuck cars, reset panels after power surges, replaced cables frayed down to their last threads. Never lost anyone. Never seen anything I couldn't explain. The dispatch came through around 11 at night. A residential building downtown, 22 floors, built in the 70s. The property manager's voice was tight with irritation. She explained the problem. Their main elevator was acting erratic, stopping at floors where nobody pressed buttons, doors opening onto empty hallways. Tenants were complaining. Probably a sensor issue, I told dispatch. I'll have it sorted in an hour. I grabbed my gear and drove through empty streets, slick with rain. The Grandview rose against the night sky like a concrete tombstone. Windows dark except for scattered squares of yellow light. The lobby smelled like old carpet and bleach. A security guard sat behind a desk, barely looking up as I signed in. The elevator waited at the far end of the lobby. Brushed steel doors, scratched and dented from years of moving carts and furniture. The call button glowed weakly. I pressed it and listened to the machinery grind to life somewhere above, cables singing their descent. When the doors opened, the cab looked normal enough. Fluorescent lights humming overhead, mirrored walls showing my reflection from 3 angles, worn rubber floor matting. I stepped inside, set my toolbox down, and pressed the button for the mechanical room on the roof. The doors closed. The car began to rise. That's when I noticed the smell. Faint at first, like copper and wet earth. It grew stronger as we climbed, filling the small space until I had to breathe through my mouth. I checked the ceiling panels, looking for a leak or dead animal in the shaft. Nothing visible. The elevator lurched suddenly, hard enough to knock me against the wall. The lights flickered. When they steadied, I wasn't alone anymore. An elderly woman stood in the corner. I hadn't heard the doors open. I hadn't heard her enter. She was just there, wearing a floral dress, decades out of style. Her hair pinned in tight gray curls. Her hands clutched a purse against her stomach. Jesus, I breathed, heart hammering. You startled me. She didn't respond. Didn't even look at me. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor indicator above the door as it climbed. 8, 9, 10, which floor? I asked, reaching for the panel. Silence. Her fingers tightened on the purse until the leather creaked. The elevator slowed. The indicator showed 14. We stopped with a gentle bump, and the doors slid open onto a dim hallway. The woman didn't move. I glanced out empty corridor, flickering lights, doors closed tight, ma'am. Is this your floor? Her head turned slowly. Too slowly. When her eyes met mine, they were completely black. Not just the pupils, the entire eye from lid to lid, like staring into deep water at night. Her mouth opened, jaw unhinging farther than bone should allow, and a sound came out that wasn't human. A wet, rattling moan that raised every hair on my neck. I stumbled backward, slamming into the panel. My elbow hit buttons at random. The doors began to close as she took a step forward, that impossible mouth still gaping. The gap narrowed 6 inches. For 2 and then sealed shut, she was gone. I stood there, shaking, breath coming in sharp gasps. The elevator continued climbing. My reflection stared back from 3 walls, face pale, eyes too wide. Sensor malfunction, I whispered. Reflection trick. Bad lighting. The words sounded hollow even to me. The car stopped at 17. The doors opened onto darkness. No lights. Just black space stretching beyond the threshold. So complete, it seemed to absorb the elevator's illumination. I could hear something out there breathing, slow and rhythmic like lungs the size of oil drums. With each exhale, a gust of warm, fetid air rolled into the cab, carrying the stench of decay. I jabbed the close button. Nothing happened. Pressed it again, harder. The doors stayed open, and something in that darkness shifted. Not walking, sliding. The wet sound of flesh dragging across tile. My hand found the emergency stop and yanked it down. The panel sparked. Every button lit up at once, numbers blazing in chaotic sequence. 319-72211. The doors slammed shut so hard the frame rang like a bell. The car dropped. My stomach flew into my throat as we plunged, falling faster than any elevator should. The cable screamed in its housing. The walls shook. I grabbed the handrail, certain we were about to crash. That I'd die in this metal coffin hurtling toward the basement at terminal velocity. We stopped gently on the ground floor. The doors opened onto the lobby. Empty. Silent. The security guard's desk sat abandoned, his coffee still steaming in its cup. I ran. Toolbox forgotten, I sprinted for the glass doors at the building's entrance. My boots echoed on marble. 20 feet away. 10. 5. My hand closed on the handlebar and pushed. Locked. All 6 doors sealed tight. I pounded on the glass, screaming for help, but nobody came. Outside, the street looked wrong, too dark, too empty, like someone had drained all the life from it. No cars. No lights in nearby buildings. Just emptiness pressing against the glass. Behind me, the elevator chimed. I turned slowly. The indicator above the elevator showed it. Descending 1, B1, B2. The display shouldn't go below basement level 1. The building only had 1 basement. But the numbers kept dropping. B3, B4, B5. The machinery groaned, cables singing a discordant note. And then it stopped. The indicator went dark. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then it began climbing again, toward me. B5, B4, B3. I backed away from the doors, searching desperately for another exit. Fire stairs, service entrance, anything. The lobby stretched impossibly long now, doors multiplying along walls that shouldn't exist. I tried the nearest one locked. All of them sealed B2, B1, G. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. The cab was empty, but the lights inside had changed to a sickly red glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. The smell rolled out not copper anymore, but burning hair and chemicals. My eyes watered. Every instinct screamed to run. But there was nowhere to go. The lobby doors wouldn't open. Stairs were locked. And something in my gut told me that if I didn't get back in that elevator, something worse would find me out here. I stepped inside. The doors closed immediately, and we began to descend. The elevator dropped past the ground floor without stopping, past basement 1. The indicator showed B2, but I knew that level didn't exist. The building plans only went down 1 floor, yet we kept falling. The hum of machinery growing deeper, more organic, like the building itself was breathing. We stopped at B4. The doors opened onto what looked like a parking garage, but wrong. The ceiling hung too low, concrete stained with dark patches that glistened in the dim fluorescent light. Cars sat in their spaces, but they were ancient models. From the 40s and 50s, chrome rusted to lace, tires rotted to nothing. Thick dust covered every surface except for a single trail of footprints leading deeper into the garage. I didn't want to follow them. Everything in me said to stay in the cab, press buttons, pray one of them would take me back up. But the elevator's lights began to dim. The red glow faded to brown, then to black, until I stood in complete darkness, with only the garages distant. Fluorescence visible beyond the threshold. The doors began to close. Some primal part of my brain understood. If those doors sealed with me inside, in the dark, I would never leave. Whatever was in the cab with me and something was. I could feel its presence pressing against my back, would have me alone in the blackness. I lunged forward, diving between the closing doors. They grazed my shoulders as I rolled onto concrete, skinning my palms. Behind me, the elevator doors sealed with a soft hiss. The car began to descend. B5, B6, B7. The numbers glowed briefly in the indicator, before winking out entirely. Silence settled over the garage. The fluorescence buzzed overhead, cycling through. Moments of dimness where shadows stretched and contracted. The footprints in the dust led between rows of dead vehicles, disappearing around a corner. I had no other direction to go. My boots crunched on concrete, scattered with glass and metal fragments. I passed a Hudson, its hood ornament broken off, windshield spiderwebbed. A Packard with its doors hanging open, interior consumed by black mold, as something had been nesting in the back seat. I saw bones. Small ones, arranged in careful patterns. The footprints ended at a service door marked stairs. The metal was pitted with rust, handle cold under my palm. It opened with a shriek that echoed through the garage, and I stepped onto a landing where emergency lights cast everything in green. The stairs went up and down. I looked up, first flights rising into darkness. No exit signs visible, then down. 20 steps to another landing, another door. From behind it came sounds, voices, dozens of them. Talking over each other in urgent whispers I couldn't quite make out. Going up meant climbing blind into an endless stairwell. Going down meant facing whatever was behind that door. I started climbing. The stairs went on forever. I counted flights 10, 20, 30, far more than the building's 22 floors should contain. My legs burned. My breath came in gasps. The emergency lights never changed, always that same nauseating green. Always spaced exactly 43 steps apart, on the 47th landing. I found graffiti scratched into the concrete wall. Turn back. Below it, in different handwriting, too late, and below that, barely visible, we're sorry. The voices from below had followed me. They were closer now, echoing up the stairwell. No longer whispers, but clear words. He's climbing. Count the steps. Does he know? He'll learn. The voice overlapped, creating a chorus that bounced off walls and disoriented my sense of direction. I climbed faster, taking stairs 2 at a time, ignoring the burning in my calves. The emergency lights began to flicker in sequence as I passed, creating the illusion of movement in my peripheral vision shapes, keeping pace with me, matching my speed. On the 73rd landing, I found a door propped open with a cinder block. Beyond it, I could see what looked like a normal apartment hallway. Beige walls, numbered doors, even a fire extinguisher in its glass case. The voices were right behind me now, shoes slapping on concrete. Getting closer, I went through the door and kicked the cinder block aside. The door slammed shut. The voices stopped instantly. Leaving silence so complete, my ears rang. The hallway stretched in both directions, longer than should fit in any building. Apartment doors lined both walls, 301, 302, 303. But when I looked closer, I realized the same numbers repeated. There were 3 305s for 308s. The pattern made no sense. One door stood open. Apartment 314. Inside, a television flickered blue light into a dim living room. I heard canned laughter from a sitcom, cheerful voices discussing something trivial. It sounded almost normal. Almost safe, I stepped inside. The living room was frozen in time furniture from the 80s, wood paneling, shag carpet worn to threads. The television showed a program I didn't recognize, actors in outdated clothes, performing for an audience that laughed too long at jokes that weren't funny. But it was the family photos on the mantle that stopped me. They showed me, at different ages and different places, with people I'd never met. Me as a child standing beside a woman who wasn't my mother. Me as a teenager in a graduation gown, diploma in hand, but I'd dropped out of high school. Me in a wedding photo with a bride whose face had been scratched away, leaving only a white oval where her features should be. You came back. The voice came from the kitchen. A man emerged holding 2 cups of coffee, smiling like we were old friends. He looked familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. Similar features, but distorted, like someone had described me to an artist who'd never seen a photograph. "I don't know you," I said, backing toward the door. "Sure you do." He set the cups down on the coffee table. You've known me your whole life. I'm you. The version that didn't make those mistakes, didn't take the easy path, didn't waste 17 years crawling around elevator shafts. His smile widened. I'm everything you could have been. The photos on the mantle multiplied. More frames appeared, showing more impossible moments. Me with children I'd never had. Me, old and gray, surrounded by grandchildren. Me receiving awards, shaking hands with officials, living lives I'd never lived. You can stay, the man said. It's peaceful here. No more late-night calls. No more grease and danger. Just rest. He gestured to the couch. Sit. Watch television. Sleep. You've earned it. Part of me wanted to. My body ached from climbing. My mind felt stretched thin from fear and confusion. The couch looked soft. The television's blue glow was almost hypnotic, but the coffee cups on the table were steaming. And when I looked closer, the steam wasn't white, it was red. And the liquid inside wasn't coffee. It was too thick, too dark, with something solid floating near the bottom of each cup. I ran. Through the doorway, into the hall, as the man's voice followed. You can't leave? You've never left. This is all there is. The hallway had changed. All the doors stood open now, and from each apartment, I could see myself. Different versions, different lives, all frozen in tableau of moments I'd never experienced. In 305, I was eating dinner with a family that didn't exist. In 308, I was dying in a hospital bed surrounded by crying faces I didn't recognize. In 311, I was standing in an identical hallway, staring into an apartment where another version of me stared back. At the end of the hall, the elevator waited. The doors were open. The cab glowed with warm golden light that seemed almost inviting after the nightmare of the apartments. I didn't trust it, but I had nowhere else to go. The elevator took me up without my pressing any buttons. The indicator climbed steadily. 4, 5, 6. Each number represented a floor I'd passed on the way down, but I knew I wasn't returning to the real building. This was something else. Some space the elevator could access that existed between floors. Between moments, between possibilities. We stopped at 9. The doors opened onto a medical floor. Gurneys lined the walls, some empty, some occupied by shapes under white sheets that didn't lie quite right. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and somewhere nearby a heart monitor beeped with steady rhythm. The antiseptic smell was overwhelming. A nurse approached the elevator. Her scrubs were pristine white, her face obscured by a surgical mask. She pushed a wheelchair, and in it sat someone I knew. Someone who shouldn't be here, my father. Dead for 6 years from a heart attack. Yet here he sat, alive but wrong. His skin had a grayish tint, and his eyes didn't focus properly. When he spoke, his voice came from somewhere else, like a recording played through a distant speaker. I'm proud of you, son. The nurse wheeled him closer. You came to visit. You finally came. You're not real, I whispered. Does it matter? His hand reached out, fingers cold when they touched mine. I'm here now. We can talk. All the conversations we never had. All the apologies I never made. His grip tightened, becoming painful. Stay with me. Don't leave again. Don't leave me alone in the dark where it's cold and quiet, and there's nothing but waiting. Waiting, always waiting. I yanked my hand away and slammed the close button. The nurse reached for me, but the doors were faster. They sealed, cutting off her outstretched hand at the wrist. The appendage fell to the floor of the cab. But it wasn't flesh and bone it. It was wires and circuitry sparking and twitching. The elevator continued upward, faster now. The car shook, cables screaming. The lights strobed. In the mirror walls, my reflection multiplied into infinity. Each one showing a slightly different expression: fear, rage, resignation, acceptance. I couldn't tell which was real. We shot past floors without stopping. 14, 17, 20, 25. Numbers that didn't exist in the building kept climbing. The temperature dropped. My breath fogged. Frost crept across the mirrors. obscuring the reflections until I was alone with just the sound of machinery and my thundering heart. At floor 33, we stopped. The doors opened onto the roof. But it wasn't the Grandview's roof. This was someplace else entirely. Wind howled across an expanse of gravel and tar paper that stretched farther than any building's roof should. No safety railings. No elevator housing or HVAC equipment. Just flat blackness extending to a horizon where city lights should have been but weren't. Like above. The sky was wrong stars and patterns I didn't recognize. Moving slowly like they were swimming through thick fluid. In the center of the roof stood a door. Just a door with no frame, no walls, standing alone. It was my front door, the one to my apartment 3 miles from here. Same brass numbers, same peeling green paint. Same dent in the lower panel where I'd kicked it in frustration after locking myself out 2 years ago. I approached slowly, boots crunching on gravel. The wind pulled at my clothes, trying to drag me toward the edge of the roof that I couldn't see but knew was there, waiting. The door's handle was warm under my palm, inviting. Through the peephole, I could see my living room, my couch, my television. My coffee mug still sitting on the table where I'd left it before the call came in. All I had to do was open it and step through, go home, forget this night. Wake up in my bed and dismiss it all as stress or contaminated food or a breakdown that needed therapy and medication. My hand turned the handle. The door opened. Warm air rushed out, carrying the smell of my apartment-old coffee, laundry detergent, the faint mustiness of carpet that needed cleaning. Everything familiar. Everything safe. I stepped through and fell. There was no floor beyond the door. Just emptiness. I plunged into darkness, arms windmilling uselessly, lungs locked in a scream that wouldn't come. The wind ripped past, deafening. As I tumbled through void, fragments flashed around me as I fell, memories or hallucinations. I couldn't tell. My first day at the repair company, shaking hands with the foreman. The call about my father's heart attack. A woman I dated briefly, her face when I'd said I wasn't ready for something serious. The time I'd found a dead man in an elevator on the 6th floor, his eyes still open, and I'd had to wait with the body for 2 hours until the police arrived. The fall went on forever. My stomach dropped into my feet, then rose into my throat, then disappeared entirely as my sense of direction vanished. Was I falling down or up? Did it matter in this place? Impact came without warning. Not the bone-shattering collision I expected, but a gentle settling, like being placed on a surface by invisible hands. I lay gasping, body intact but mind reeling. When my eyes focused, I was back in the elevator. Same mirrored walls, same worn floor matting, same fluorescent lights humming overhead. The indicators showed G ground floor. The doors stood open, and beyond them, the Grandview's lobby waited. Exactly as it had been when I'd arrived. The security guard sat at his desk, looking up as I stumbled out. "You okay, man? You look like hell." I stared at him, unable to form words. My reflection in the lobby's windows showed someone haggard, eyes haunted, clothes soaked with sweat. But my toolbox sat on the floor beside the elevator where I'd left it. My truck keys were still in my pocket. According to the wall clock, only 15 minutes had passed since I'd signed in. The elevator, I managed. It's not. You need to shut it down, completely. The guard frowned. That's what the property manager called you for, right? To fix it, it can't be fixed. I backed toward the doors, unable to take my eyes off the elevator. The cab sat empty, innocent. Just a machine. It shouldn't be used. Seal it off. Board it up. Tell people it's condemned. I'll let them know your professional opinion. The guard's tone suggested he thought I was unhinged. Maybe I was. I left. Walked out into the night where rain still fell on streets that were properly full of cars and light and life. My truck sat where I'd parked it. I climbed in, started the engine, and drove. Not home. I couldn't face my apartment after seeing that door standing alone on the impossible roof. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the city until dawn, radio off. Just the sound of tires on wet pavement and my own breathing, 3 days later, I called the repair company and quit. Told them I was changing careers, moving states, something vague and final. They didn't press for details. Nobody asked why. I never learned what happened to the Grandview's elevator. Never checked if they followed my advice to shut it down. Some part of me knows they didn't, that it's still running, still carrying passengers between floors, still waiting for someone else to answer a late-night call and discover that some machines don't. Connect places, they connect possibilities. And not all possibilities should be accessible. I work in landscaping now. Outdoor work, where the sky is always visible, where I'm never enclosed, never trapped between floors in a humming metal box that smells like copper and earth. My hands stayed skilled. They remember how to diagnose problems, tighten bolts, read wiring diagrams. But I'll never use those skills again, because sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, I remember that elevator. And I wonder, was I ever really inside it at all? Or am I still there, trapped between floors, living through the fantasy of escape, while my body rides up and down, forever? The mirrors showed infinite reflections. How do I know which one walked out into the lobby that night? How can I be sure this life is the real one? I can't. That's the thing that keeps me awake. That uncertainty, that doubt, that nibbles at the edges of my mind, like rust on a cable, weakening it strand by strand until one day the phone rang last week. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I did, and I heard it. The sound of an elevator motor humming in the background, cables singing their familiar song. Then a voice, my voice but not quite right, distorted. It's time to come back. They're waiting. I hung up, changed my number, but I know it doesn't matter. Because the elevator knows where I am. It always has. And someday when I'm not paying attention, I'll turn a corner and find a door where no door should be. Or I'll step into a friend's building and see that familiar brushed steel, those worn rubber floor mats. That indicator showing numbers that shouldn't exist. And when the doors open, I'll see myself already inside, staring back, smiling that wrong smile. The version that never left. The one that's been riding between floors all this time, waiting patiently for me to rejoin him. Because you can't leave the elevator. Not really. You can only pretend you have, living in the spaces between floors, between moments, between heartbeats, till the machine decides it's time to collect you again. I haven't slept properly in weeks. Every time I close my eyes, I hear it, that soft chime. The whisper of doors sliding open. The hum of machinery that sounds almost like breathing. And I know, the absolute certainty, that I'll answer the call when it comes. Not because I want to, but because I never really left. None of us do. We just ride until our floor comes up. And mine is coming soon. I can feel it descending.